Hello everyone, so today we're going to be having another wee look at Darklord Despia. It seems to be the favourite deck of a lot of people down in the comments, and honestly I can completely understand why. The more and more I play it, the more and more I'm loving it. It's a completely different sort of playstyle to the other types of decks I use, where it's more based upon recursion and endurance rather than direct interaction and negation, which is a refreshing change of pace. And you know, you're not trying to set up 17 negates to completely control the game, you're just putting down the first Darklord with maybe an interruption or two off of your Darklords, and then you're swarming the field, you're reducing their attack, you're fusion summoning with their monsters. So it's a completely different sort of playstyle than a lot of the other decks that I play at the minute, so it is definitely becoming one of my favourite decks. We'll not be doing an in-depth sort of breakdown of it here because we've already played it. This version of it is virtually identical to the last one that we played. The only small changes is we replaced Morningstar and Uprising with 2 Lightning Storms. I don't know if that's a positive change or not yet. I've been sort of mixing and matching, playing back and forth. I think both are fine. It's a minimal difference. We didn't really resolve, the first Darklord isn't here for its first effect anyway. We don't really care about this. So sometimes if you're being forced to go second, being able to wipe out all the back row from like an Eldritch player, for example, is very beneficial. Or if your opponent has a few negates on board, like if you're playing against Swordsoul, if they have Baron de Fleur and Grandmaster, you really want to force that Baron de Fleur negate on something inconsequential, so that they're not negating then some of your engine based cards. So apart from that, again, you can sort of mix and match, depends on what you want to play there. We're also trying Apollousa because someone had told me if her attack is reduced to 0 by Quiritis's effect, at the end of the turn it will return to its original attack points, even if it was already reduced from its own effect. So that's something I was looking to test as well. Again, it says the original attack of this card. So, you know, if it gets reset back by the Quiritis, that's fantastic. It's not an interaction that I've tested myself yet because most of the games are over before I can even summon Apollousa. But yeah, very, very strong, very consistent deck, lots of draw power, lots of surge power, very, very simplistic engine, very, very fun to play. Not really very much more you can ask for in a deck like this. So if you enjoy what you're seeing here, if you're enjoying playing Darklord Despia or any of the other decks that I put up on the channel, and you want to see any other content or even maybe more games on the same sort of decks, if you want to get a better understanding of how it works, or if you just like seeing it in action, let me know, and then feel free to subscribe while you're down there. So let's go on then with game number 1. Okay, game 1. We're actually going first here, which is good. The moment you see Allure of Darkness and Despian Tragedy in your hand, you know it's going to be a good turn 1. So we Allure, draw 2, banish the Tragedy to search for our Aliber. We grow into a second Allure of Darkness, so we're going to do that, and we're going to get rid of our Aliber. It's just the least important card in hand. Draw another 2 off of Ixchel. So we've just drawn like 6 cards already, which is fantastic. That's just what this deck does. It's amazing. We're going to give him a Nuka back, which we did end up cutting from the list. We're going to activate our Despian Theater. We're going to fuse 3 together in the hand, for our first Darklord. That'll get our Dramaturge back out to the field. The first Darklord then will pay 1,000 to resurrect Superbia. Superbia will resurrect then Tezcatlipoca. And then we set 1 and pass. So we have basically 2 negates. None of our fairies can be targeted, and 3 negates because we negate 1 from the extra deck too. So, 3 negates and we're untargetable. We're pretty big, beefy here, so we're doing good. We're pretty confident. We're going up against Dragonmaids here, so he's just doing typical Dragonmaid stuff, nothing really noteworthy. The moment he goes into battle phase here, he tries to bounce off the field to summon out a bigger Dragonmaid. I'm assuming to swing over the Dramaturge, because it would be a problem for another otherwise. So we're going to send the Indulged Darklord to negate with the Sanctified, then we're going to activate Tezcatlipoca to copy the Sanctified in the graveyard to negate the Parlor as well. We do not need him swinging into our Dramaturge, because if he summons something like the Heavenly Spheres, we don't want that duplicating itself. So Verte Anaconda comes on out, and this is exactly why we didn't want him doing that exact thing. So he summons the Verte Anaconda, we negate using Dramaturge, we re-summon a monster using the first Darklord, and that was it. He realized that was going nowhere. So yeah, perfect display, brutal power. You're just setting up a board that basically just can't be trifled with on your first turn. You're huge monsters. You can't be targeted by anything. If you do end up getting destroyed, the field spell gives you a lot of recursion and summoning your first Darklord back. The first Darklord can summon some of your other monsters back. The Dramaturge constantly resummons itself. Superbia brings great card advantage. Just so much of it blends together to just create this big sort of meaty field that is very difficult for your opponent to out. There's not a lot of cards rotating within the current sort of metagame that can very easily take out the first Darklord, because that's what they would need to get rid of first in order to target my cards. So there's not a lot of things in the metagame right now that consistently do that. The only ones we can really think of are DPE, the Supreme Sovereign from Swordsoul. Those are the biggest ones, to be honest. Everything else is more of a here and there counter. Unless, you know, they've got, you know, Droplet, Darkroll or no more, things like that will put a decent hole in the deck. But apart from that, your opponent doesn't have a lot of counters, and you have so much recursion that it's difficult for them to get over it. So yeah, good game number one. Very straightforward, very simple. Let's get into game number two. Alrighty, now I believe game number two here was actually a mirror match, if I'm not mistaken. So he's going to hit us with a maxi off the bat. It sucks, but it's not the worst thing in the world to happen. We're going to draw two, and we're going to banish the Tragedy. This is actually the first two games I played after picking the deck back up, so seeing that twice in a row was great. That's actually what made me want to make the video as well. So we're going to just start drawing, start searching here, grabbing the X-Gel and Rebellion, go to the grave to draw two more. We summon Aliber to grab Branded Opening, because we already had the field spell, so we basically wanted to use that to get the Dramaturge on our opponent's turn. It was just more valuable than Branded in red. We get to resummon the Tragedy. That was a bit of a misplay. I probably should have just not used that Libitum's effect, because, you know, it's not worth giving him a card. We resummon X-Gel, search for the Sanctified Darklord using her effect, and then we pass. So our opponent has, what, 9 cards in hand or something like that? So not great. But we are big, we are untargetable. He's going to go for Aliber right off the bat, Branded Opening into Aliber. We're going to use Branded Opening of our own here, but it's going to get ashed, unfortunately. So it does suck a little bit that we're not able to put our Dramaturge on board, but we are going to use Sanctified Darklord here, and we're going to chain the first Darklord to it. So the reason we're doing that is we send the X-Gel to negate with Sanctified, then with the first Darklord bringing it basically back before that chain resolves, it means that we have an active negate as well with Sanctified in the graveyard right away, instead of needing a second chain link to resolve, basically. Very, very minimal impact type play, but again, we might as well play optimally. He's going to go for Ad Libitum and Quiritis here. Quiritis doesn't do anything to us. All of our non-fusions are in defense mode, so it doesn't matter. He resummons Aliber, he goes for Fairy Tail Luna, then we're going to super poly all 3 of his monsters into Despia and Persekion, which was huge. Persekion recently, I didn't use it at all when I was first playing the deck, but since I've started leaning on Super Poly a bit more, started leaning more on the draw power, this card has been amazing. So he's going to banish 7 here to try and resummon the Snow. It also does stop our Persekion from reviving that Quiritis, so that's not great for us. Quiritis is going to summon the Albaz from the deck, so we're going to use our Sanctified Negate with X-Gel to stop the Albaz. Figuring that, you know, that pretty much has to be the end of it. He's exhausted all of his resources, unless he's playing like an Exceed monster here, and he ends up going into, what, Zeus will be a problem, I guess? But no, his last card is Fusion Destiny. So he's going to summon out the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer here, which, again, isn't the biggest problem. He's going to try and destroy our first Darklord, but we'll banish the Branded Opening to protect it. He'll take out Tragedy, but we don't care too much about that. So pass turn here, and this is where Persekion is really good, because it's like a direct counter to the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. If he doesn't take out Persekion, we're just going to steal his Phoenix Enforcer, and he knows that, so he decides to preemptively pop, which, you know, suits me. That means we still got our first Darklord on the field. So Phoenix Enforcer is going to come back, Aliber's also going to come back, and we're going to negate the Fairy Tail Snow so that it can't get flipping. We'll revive the Ad Libitum, and the reason we're doing Ad Libitum in particular is because when we use it to resummon our Quiritis, its effect will resummon our Persekion back out to the field. Quiritis will get reducing his whole field here to 0, and Persekion is going to steal that Phoenix Enforcer and summon it to our side of the field. So it's no more Enforcer for him, basically. Everything gets reduced to 0. Easy, easy, easy lethal. Nothing he can do about it. Again, he had a 9-card hand. Playing the mirror match, so, you know, he had access to virtually all the same resources as we did. So, you know, it just goes to show you he wasn't playing the Darklords. I'm pretty sure he wasn't anyway. He certainly didn't play any Darklords against us. wasn't playing the Darklord engine, didn't have the follow through to finish the job, and this is what has happened. Do I think the Darklord version of playing Despia is better than the pure version? Absolutely. I don't understand why the pure version is getting so much more representation. The only advantage I can think of is it gets to play, you know, quite a lot more hand traps, but honestly, I don't think the Despian engine works well enough by itself. I don't think it has a good enough endgame. I think the Darklords really add a lot to that sort of the consistency, the breaking power, essentially to the end game of the deck. But yeah, there's a fun little mirror match. You don't see Despia too often on the ladder, so it is fun to see every time you go against it. It just happens to be whenever we're also using it, so may the best duelist win, basically. On to game number 3. Okay, game 3. We're opening up first again, which is good to see. The deck does function good going first and second, but I do like having even just a little bit of interruption. You know, I really love having Dramaturge in the field, for example, or even like a single Rebellion or Sanctified Negate. But it can function just as well going both first or second. We're going to go for our standard plays, bring out the first Darklord. Dramaturge is going to resummon itself. Our first Darklord is also going to pay 1,000 to revive the Aliber. I don't believe reviving the Aliber was even really the correct play. I thought I was able to bring back Nurgle, but I forgot you can only summon the big Darklords only once per turn, so small misplay on my part. Our opponent's going to go for Desires off the bat. Looks like we're going up against Swordsouls. We didn't see enough of those in the last video. So Mo Yi is going to reveal the Taya to summon a token. Our opponent hasn't normal summoned yet, so that's good. It's important to know. He's going to go for Grandmaster to search, which suits us down to the ground because you can't use both effects of the Grandmaster on one turn. You can only use one of his effects per turn, so that means no negate. Not that we can be targeted anyway, but bear that in mind. He's now going to go into his level 10, which is going to be the Supreme Sovereign. Now, you're probably wondering why not Baron de Fleur? Well, he summons Baron de Fleur, and then what? None of our fairies can be targeted, and he's not big enough to take any of us out. The Supreme Sovereign, on the other hand, boosts up himself by 100 per banished card and reduces us by 100 per banished card. Plus, he has a non-targeting banishment on his effect, so that's grand. He's going to go for Strategist effect activates. We're going to use Dramaturge to preemptively negate that Sovereign because it is going to be a problem. We can't really be putting up with that right now. He normal summons the Taya. The Taya will grab a token and then he'll Synchro Summon into the Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. So that's really cool to see here because that is basically the counter. We're going to try activating our first Darklord at this stage to try and bring back our Nurgle. But he does have Call by the Grave, so no more targets for the first Darklord, so we get nothing out of it. Pay 1,000 life points for no reason. He's going to swing in Aliber. Draco Berserker will gain Aliber's attack points and get to attack again, so he takes out the first Darklord. That'll trigger Aliber's effect, and this was basically bait. So we don't really care about negating this guy until the end of the turn because he's already used his effect. But he couldn't get over the Dramaturge, and we didn't want him to just pass turn and be done with it. We wanted him to try and destroy one of our fairies. So by bringing Aliber back and giving him an attack target, we can then entice him to destroy it so the field spell can resurrect the first Darklord. That was the whole point behind that play, and bringing back Aliber didn't have any other function or value. So we've got our first Darklord back, but we're still not big enough because of that Sovereign. So that Sovereign is a real problem. He's going to use the Crossout Designator. Now he's hitting Ash off of Crossout, but it's purely just to activate the effect of the Sovereign, and I know that. So we're going to fuse both of his monsters there, plus our Despia Dramaturge to go into Persekion. Dramaturge is going to activate, but his Swordsoul does in fact activate as well. Now we're not in the main phase, so we can't use either of our fusions effects, which is unfortunate, but it's fine. Our Dramaturge and our first Darklord are gone. Aliber does trigger to resurrect itself and negate the Sovereign, so we're in a dicey position, but we're still somewhat in control. Standby phase here, we're going to grab from his graveyard the Berserker. We didn't have any, the other one has no value to us because we have nothing to banish to negate stuff. We get impermed anyway, so that's fine. Honestly, we're still big enough to take the Sovereign out, so we'll swing into it, do our 200 damage, get a bit of damage directly in with our Aliber. So we still, again, we're in a good position. It's been a dicey couple of turns, a lot of back and forth here. He's going to go for Ecclesia, and he goes for another Pot of Desires. It brings him down to 5 cards left in the deck. At this stage, we're going to preemptively steal his Sovereign from his graveyard. So that means not only are we going to get boosting and get reducing, if he does manage to banish something else this turn, then we get to banish a card in his field and in his graveyard. So we take complete control of the duel by stealing his Supreme Sovereign. He banishes the Blackout to use the Taya. Blackout will give him another token. So what we're going to do is use the Sovereign. We're going to take out the Taya. We're going to take out the Moyi from the graveyard in case he had a way to revive it. We didn't. That's the only other card in his graveyard that was a threat. He banishes 3 to summon Protos, declares water. Can't get over his own monster because it can protect itself. Again, the Supreme Sovereign banishes any card to protect itself from damage, from destruction. So we protect ourselves. His other card was an effect failure. He had nothing. So yeah, that's pretty much game over. So yeah, extremely powerful couple of games here, showing off Prosecchion more so than anything else. I really love that card recently, especially, you know, super polying into it using 2 or 3 of your opponent's monsters is so brutally impactful, and then taking one of their own monsters to use against them is great. I love Prosecchion, such a good card, and for it to just be an R rarity card, amazing. But yeah, nothing really different about that game. A lot of back and forth there, and again, as I said, Swordsoul, I am confident, best deck in the game, hands down, no question, no competition. And again, we're able to consistently beat it. Across all of these videos I've been doing, consistently beating it with all of these rogue decks. Don't get too frustrated by seeing Swordsoul in every game. It is a strong deck, but it's not unbeatable, especially if you know how it works. So if you want to get good at beating Swordsoul using all of these rogue decks, you know, not a lot of people want to just use the meta decks, and I get that. So if you want to get good at beating Swordsoul using your rogue decks, learn how they work, pay attention to them, pay attention to their plays. You go back, watch, I've got 3 videos on that deck now at this stage. Look at those, see how the deck works, notice its weak points, its strong points, and how to beat it. Otherwise, if you're bringing a weaker deck into a metagame that you don't understand, you're always going to lose. If you bring that weaker deck into a metagame that you do understand, you have a much better chance of beating people. So bear that in mind. I'm not going to ramble on too long here over game number 3. Let's get into the last game, and then we'll revisit the deck list just very briefly at the end. Alright, our 4th and final game, and we are going second this time. We're going up against an Invoked deck, which is interesting. So he's going to normal summon his Invoker here. Link summon into the Justice. Now, he already had his Invocation in hand, so he's either only running 1 copy or he has all of the copies in his hand, which would be unfortunate. He'll use the Invocation's second effect to return the Aliber to hand. So basically he has what is effectively an Omni Negate. Depending on what you have in your hand, you discard a card of the same frame to negate that frame. So discard a spell to negate a spell, discard a monster to negate a monster, so on and so forth. He's really holding on to it. He's being smart here. We go for Allure of Darkness, go for Banishment. We use Ixchel's effect to get going, and that's when he decides to banish. He discards Nibiru, and at this stage, I saw that discarded Nibiru, and I thought this man's hand must be stacked. He's holding on to something. So he negates the Ixchel. Now, our Ixchel doesn't get banished because the Ixchel was not in the same location upon resolution as it was at activation. So it was negated while it was in the hand, but it was no longer in the hand to be banished by the Makaba. So it's still in our graveyard, which means we can still revive it off of contact. We're going to use Branded Opening here to put Tezcatlipoca in the graveyard. We also get our Aliber, which will search for another opening. The reason we search for another opening is to gain value off of discarding it for our Super Poly, because we can banish opening from the grave to protect our fusion monsters. Ixchel then is going to use Contact in the grave to grab our Tez back. Tez is going to copy the Banishment. At this stage, we're going to get Gamut, actually. So he did have something in his hand after all. Which, you know, is fine. It's not the worst interruption in the world. He pops our Tezcatlipoca. So we just pass turn. There's no point in attacking because they're going to get banished in the end phase anyway. So main phase 1, he resummons Alistair the Invoker. He goes to search for Invocation. Then we negate it basically using our Dragonmaids. Dragonmaids will add a counter onto a monster once per turn, and so long as that monster has a counter and our Dragonmaids is face up, that monster's negated. So he's actually going to summon Linkuriboh here. Because his Alistair was turned into a level 1 by our effect, he can summon Linkuriboh off of it. So we're going to do the same play here that we tried to do last turn. We contact back our Tezcatlipoca. Tez is going to use Banishment to grab Sanctified. So that's grand. It just puts basically a negate on our hand for when we need it. We normal summon the Aliber here, and our opponent realizes, yeah, that's probably game. And he was 100% right. We use Aliber, search for the field spell, use the field spell to summon the first Darklord. First Darklord gets, you know, and it just escalates from there. Our opponent didn't really have much of anything. So yeah, that's the fourth and final game. Another display of, honestly, this deck, it just feels like Super Poly the deck, because you have so much draw power, so much searching off of, you know, 3 Banishment, 3 Allure, 3 X-Gel. I was even playing Prosperity at one point, but that sort of clashes a little bit. I don't really like Prosperity. But either way, you have a whole ton of drawing and searching, so you're inevitably going to draw into something like Super Poly, like Lightning Storm, that's going to really help you whenever you're going second. So yeah, absolutely, it just feels like Super Poly the deck, which is amazing. I love Super Poly, it's such a good counter, it's only going to get better. So yeah, that's game number 4 then, so that's the last one of the video. Let's get into the deck list and have a brief look over it. So this is the deck list. Now it is extremely similar to the last one, so we're not going to spend too long looking at it, but what different sort of changes have we been doing, have we been trying? I think that this version approximates what the final product should look like. I tried one before that was playing, you know, it was like triple Maxi, double Lightning Storm, and then the Nibiru or something like that. I think I cut the 2 Uka back to bring it down to 42 cards. We're playing something like this. We were trying a whole bunch of like different sort of mixtures and recipes. Honestly, the biggest problem with that version of it was the hand traps. We kept on drawing too much Maxi. We were drawing the Nibiru at the wrong times. It was just super clunky compared to what we had, and honestly this version of it seems to work so smoothly. I really love this version of it. I really love this deck in general. Tragedy, Get Searching, Ukaback. You never ever resolve Ukaback. It's hard to know why it's even here, to be honest. I would probably... Its main purpose, the only reason I've used it, is to summon it to your opponent's field off of the Indulged Darklord. But you can honestly cut this and make this anything you want. You can maybe bring it down. Let's see what else we have here. You can put an Amdusk. Amdusk is pretty good. It means you basically get to recycle back some of your Darklord cards by discarding it from hand. So that's kind of neat. And then you can maybe put in your Morningstar again, something like that. But again, that's for you guys to play with, you guys to find out whatever you do and don't like. I haven't had any issues having Uka back in. I haven't been drawing into him too often, so it hasn't given me hassle. But I imagine there's going to be a game I have where I regret having him. So do with that information as you will. He hasn't given me any issues just yet, but I can foresee it in the timeline somewhere. So you guys can preempt that if you want. Even like a third Tragedy. I love Tragedy so much. People play this card at 1, and I don't get it. You have Tragedy and Allure in hand. That is so much advantage. If you rip into it off of Allure, that's so much advantage. If you have it and your field spell, have it and Super Poly, it and Branded in red, that is so much advantage. Honestly, it is such a good card. I never see it and regret having it. It is so good. So again, that's another possibility. But yeah, again, I'm not going to sit and ramble about a deck we've already covered. If you want to see the ins and outs of it, you can visit the last profile to sort of get a better breakdown of sort of like card by card. In general, the deck is pretty simple. You saw the whole thing in the gameplay. You just fusion summon in the huge monsters, super poly your opponent's monsters away, draw 4 million cards, and just win the game. It's that simple. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. If there's any other decks recommendations or anything like that you want me to try out either in this deck or in any other deck, again, bear in mind I'm not a millionaire, I don't have every card in the game, but if I have a deck or if I even am close to getting one, I'll give it a go. I'll let you know. Just leave a comment down. I respond to everyone who leaves a comment, so by all means. And if you're down there, why not subscribe? It's completely free and you'd be doing me a favor. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'll pretty much hand it over to you guys, so you enjoy the rest of your day.